compile in the support. So that library, the IMAP library that we grabbed from the University of Washington, we have to tell Asterisk that we want to build with it. And then once we have that, we'll have the IMAP storage option from within the menu select, which says, okay, build IMAP voicemail support when you compile Asterisk. And then when we install it, then we'll actually have the ability to use the IMAP server. So this is the configuration in voicemail.conf. This is how we actually tell Asterisk to connect to the server. So dovecot's running locally. We're telling it that we want to use the IMAP greetings, which basically says store your unavailable and your busy messages like, sorry, hi, I'm Leif, you've reached me and I'm not available, leave a message, blah, blah, blah. That instead of being stored locally just on the file system in a separate directory outside of your IMAP, everything is now stored there. And this is how we're actually connecting to the IMAP server. And then this is basically the only thing other than connecting to the IMAP server, this looks just like a regular configuration for your voicemail, except that we have the IMAP user at the end. And that's basically telling Asterisk when someone calls voicemail 100 or you access voicemail 100, that's the user we're actually connecting to inside the voicemail, the email server, which mailbox we're connecting with. So yeah, nothing really fancy here. I'm just, once you've got it all set up and configured, you just go ahead and use the voicemail and voicemail main applications from your dial plan, just as usual. There's nothing really different that you have to do there. So I went through this one pretty quick. I'm going to actually show some dial plan here shortly, which is where I'll actually spend some time and show what I'm actually doing.
There's one caveat about the IMAP voicemail.
Yeah.
It holds open the IMAP connection for every phone. The message rating indicator.
Oh, does it?
Yeah. So if you have, like, if you're using a really large system, you have it opening up IMAP connections for every phone is the MWIS we monitor for really show up resources on that other system.
Good to know. So basically, what Simon was saying is it can be a little bit of a resource hog because it's for every user that you're monitoring message waiting indication for, it's leaving a connection up. And thus, if you have, like, say, 500 users, you're going to have 500 connections and the resources associated with each of those connections. So I'm going to move into the adaptive ODBC. Basically allows Asterisk to adapt the table layouts. Kevin had mentioned before you can create aliases so that the table format that Asterisk would expect, you can actually create a different table format and tell it how to understand the format you created. So maybe you have a web interface that you're creating, or you have another application, you've already gotten some of these tables created and they're already using them. Instead of changing all the applications to suit Asterisk, you can make Asterisk be changed to suit the applications you've already deployed. One of the other cool things that I like about it is the amount of work is significantly lowered when you want to implement the Asterisk real-time architecture, which, if you don't know what real-time is basically allows you to store configuration information and user information and SIP registration information in the database. This is a big deal when you're doing clustering because instead of having to rewrite the dial plan or write your SIP.conf files and things like that from a script over each period of time, you can have multiple Asterisk boxes all connected to this one database center. And when you put a user into the database, it's essentially immediately available to all the servers. So in order to get this set up previously, you needed to know the exact table format, and if it changed, then especially between versions, it would break and you wouldn't get notified. Now this basically allows us to be notified of what has changed, and will automatically add new columns if necessary, or if pending that you actually allow it to do that. So these are the tools and how to install it. For my example, I used MySQL. You have to install a separate package for that besides the Unix ODBC. And then if you want to use the adaptive part of it, that was for the ODBC connection. But if you want to use the adaptive part of the MySQL, I found that you just had to use the res MySQL driver. And that's found in the Asterisk add-ons package. Oh, okay, so I'm talking about aliases here that you can configure for the columns, and you can basically tell Asterisk to adapt to your own table layouts. So that's with the CDRs. I think this is all stuff that I had talked about before. So yeah, like I said, basically you don't have to worry about broken real time anymore. It'll adapt to what you have around you. And the thing I really liked about it was I just created a simple table, loaded up Asterisk, and away it went. So these are the three options that have been added. There's warn, which provides you a warning on the Asterisk console that says, hey, you're missing this column. There's create char, which is just creates the column for you, but it will always use the char type and will create it in the width that it needs to be set to. Or create close, which will try to set it to the appropriate type. It'll basically pick the best type that it knows of for the database that you're connecting to, whether you're connecting to Postgres with res PG SQL or res MySQL, etc. So this is the file where I defined, this is the res MySQL file, and this is just the database host is where I'm connecting to, the database name, and the user and the password, the port, and there's the requirements, which is your warn, create close, or create char, which will tell Asterisk how does it want to handle missing columns in the database, or incorrect columns, or misnamed columns, etc. So here in the extconfig.com file, this is the file that actually tells Asterisk what to get out of the database as opposed to local memory. So in my example here, I just have sipreg, sipreg-s, which is the SIP registrations, which is just storing SIP registrations in the database. And I'm using the MySQL driver as opposed to ODBC, and the database name is Asterisk. The third option, if I wanted, I could have specified the table name, but I'm just going to have the default table name, which is basically the same as sipreg-s is the default table name. So I'm not sure if you see this because it's a little small, but basically when I started, I had it set to warn. So when I started up, it said failed to query the database columns, table Asterisk, which is the database name, .sipreg-s, which is the table name, doesn't exist. So it's telling me, hey, you're missing a table. You need to create that table. So hey, now I actually know what I'm missing. Previously, I wouldn't get a warning message like this. It would just not load. So basically what I did then was I created a table, I just created the ID field, made it auto increment and set it as the primary key and didn't do anything else. So there's my table layout before I restarted Asterisk with the create close option. So once I've restarted Asterisk, then now I've just described the same table and this table has already been created for me automatically. So I don't have to go and even really find a document of what the table format is or anything. It just makes it for me. So now some of these other things I'm going to get into will actually have some dial plan and be a little more fun than just talking about databases and voicemail to email. This is currently located in a branch located on the bug tracking site, and the bug ID is 14771. Works with MS Exchange, Zimbra, and Google Calendar, and my examples are going to be using the Google Calendar because I like to use things that are free and don't require me to set up extra servers. So what this will allow us to do is perform some call routing decisions based on my calendar status. So for example, I can send calls to voicemail when I've set my status to busy. The example I'm going to be looking at as well, which is a little more advanced, is automatically call participants for a conference when you schedule it. So what I can do is in my calendar, I schedule a meeting, a conference, and it's going to say I want the meeting to be in conference room 7070 or whatever the case may be. And within the description field, I can put all the phone numbers of the people that are going to be part of that conference. And when the conference comes up, instead of everyone having to remember, oh, I have to call in the conference, or maybe their phone doesn't have their calendar on it, doesn't remind them that you have a meeting set up, what it does is you don't even have to worry about it because it's just going to call you and automatically add you to the conference when that calendar time comes up. Because this is just ready for testing, some of the features and the functionality of what I'm going to show may